The cafe was the kind that smelled like rain, even when the sky was dry, steam curling off chipped cups, soft music that made conversations feel like secrets. A boy and his father sat by the window, where the glass kept fogging, as if the world outside wanted in. The boy's name was Matteo. He kept glancing at the door, the way you look toward a goal UV drawn in chalk on the street. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be at a clinic appointment 2 buses away. But the buses were late, and the air was heavy, and the father's hands had trembled when he paid for 2 hot chocolates, because sometimes courage needs to be held warm. The bell over the door chimed, heads turned without meaning to. A hoodie, a cap, a face you know even when he tries to hide it. Some names arrive before people do. "Dad," Matteo whispered, as if saying it too loud might scare the moment away. "It's him." The father looked. He knew the name, of course he did. He also knew what rent felt like when it wouldn't bend, and what pharmacy counters felt like when they said, "not covered," and how people change when you ask for help. He didn't want to ask. He didn't want to be that man in front of his son. But the boy's eyes, little sons refusing to go out. The father stood. He crossed the floor like the distance was a mountain. "Excuse me," he said to the young man by the counter, voice too polite for the weight it carried. "I'm sorry to bother you. My son, he's a fan. Would you sign something? We don't have anything but this." He lifted a napkin. White, thin, the kind that tears when you believe in it too hard. The room held its breath. The young man turned, and the father saw it then. Just a kid, really, with shoulders that shouldn't have to carry so much recognition. The boy with the cap smiled without the armor of fame. "Of course," he said. "What's his name?" "Matteo." He set the napkin on the counter like it might be fragile. The pen was stubborn, the paper softer than the ink deserved. Still he wrote carefully, "To Matteo, keep the ball close and your heart closer. Lamine." He added a quick drawing of a small star, like a spark he hoped would travel. Back at the table, Matteo pressed the napkin to his chest, as if it could steady the world inside him. "He wrote my name," he said, awed. It lit his face from the inside, a lantern in a storm. They made the clinic appointment on time. That day the news was more of the same. Numbers that didn't move, medicine that did but cost too much to catch. The father smiled with his mouth and not his eyes, the way grown-ups do when they don't want to scare the brave. 2 weeks later the storm came. Real rain, hard and sudden. A phone call in the middle of dinner that shook the air. The clinic had the medication, 1 last vial, a bridge they could cross if they could pay before the inventory reset at midnight. The amount was a cliff. The clock was a faster kind of weather. The father called everyone he knew. He sold what could be sold. A bicycle, a watch with a story in the band, coins from a jar that remembered birthdays. The stack on the table grew, but the cliff didn't lower. The storm seemed to lean closer to the windows, listening. On the shelf, next to schoolbooks and a model airplane with 1 wing stubbornly askew, the napkin sat in a frame they'd bought for $3 at a thrift store. It looked both out of place and exactly right, like hope does when you put it somewhere visible. Matteo touched the glass. "Don't," the father said too quickly, then softer. "It's your favorite thing." "It's paper," the boy said, steady in a way the father wasn't. "Paper can go, so someone can stay." The father shook his head, because fathers pretend they are made of iron. But the clock kept moving, and the rain kept talking to the river, and somewhere a pharmacist was checking a list that would forget his son's name at midnight. He took the frame down. He didn't let himself look at the signature. The auction site was ugly in the way lifelines can be. He posted the photo with hands that didn't feel like his, wrote the story with a truth that scared him, and pressed list because sometimes love is a button and a cliff at the same time. 3 minutes later, the first bid came, then another, then the numbers went from small to possible to something like a miracle with edges. The comments were the sound of strangers remembering how to be a village. For Matteo. For the little sons. Run, kid. In an hour, the napkin was worth more than anything the father owned. In 2, it held the price of a breath. At 11:17 p.m., a collector with a username that sounded like a secret paid enough to build a bridge and lay down a carpet too. The father cried the way you cry when you finally put a mountain down. They made it to the pharmacy with 10 minutes to spare. The vial was small as a promise. The pharmacist said, "You made it like that you'd won a final with a volley and a prayer." The father held the box like it might try to fly away. Matteo slept in the back seat with the rhythm that comes after storms. The next morning, the frame on the shelf was empty. The father slid a sheet of notebook paper inside to fill the space until courage could afford nostalgia. Matteo smiled anyway. "We traded paper for tomorrow," he said. Days turned into weeks. The medication did its quiet work. Matteo's cheeks found a little more light. The world remembered its color. The father breathed, without counting. The napkin. It vanished into the collector's vault, a white square among shinier things, or so they thought. Months later, at a neighborhood pitch where the goals were metal and the grass was more brown than green, a youth clinic announced a surprise. A pro was coming to run drills. The kids arrived early, faces scrubbed, shirts tucked in, as if dreams noticed that kind of respect. He came with the easy silence of someone who knows noise will follow anyway. Hat low, smile real. He juggled with a ball that had already lived 2 lifetimes. He showed them how to touch the ground with their eyes, how to hear a pass before it arrived. He said their names, everyone, learned quick and kept safe. Matteo waited at the back, not because he wanted to be last, but because sometimes joy is so big, you have to hold it with both hands. "Hey," the pro said to the father on the sideline, because not all heroes forget the people who hold coats and breathe in worry. "I know you." The father started to deny it on reflex. You learn to be small when bills are big, but the young man pointed at his own chest and then at the small star drawn on a memory. "The cafe," he said. "The napkin." The father laughed, a sound with new muscle. "We don't have it anymore," he said, and the story came out like sunlight through blinds. The storm, the auction, the vial, the clock that nearly didn't forgive them. "You saved him without knowing," he finished, and it wasn't a metaphor. The pro looked at Matteo the way a lighthouse looks at water. He swallowed. Sometimes gratitude is too heavy for the throat. "He saved himself," he said finally. "I only write my name." Practice ended with a circle, the kind where everyone pretends not to wipe their eyes. He gave away wristbands and secrets about how to turn quicker on wet grass. He signed shirts and shoes and forearms that would cause trouble at school later. When it was Matteo's turn, the boy extended a simple white card from a folded envelope. Inside, a photocopy of the napkin in the thrift store frame. "I didn't want the space to be empty," he said, shy but brave. "Could you sign this one too, so we can keep a version at home?" The pro took the card like it might sing. He didn't sign right away. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out something wrapped in tissue paper. It wasn't new tissue. The edges were bruised by travel. He unwrapped it slowly, a magician who didn't want the trick, just the truth. A frame, the napkin, the real one. The letters still a little smudged where ink met too soft paper, the small star, unmistakable. Matteo's breath caught. The father's hand found his shoulder because some moments need witnesses. "I bought it back," the pro said quietly. "Found the collector, told him why. I thought maybe it belonged where it started." He turned the frame around. On the back, a second napkin had been fastened, the kind waiters tuck beside plates. On it, a new message in the same careful script. For Mateo's next sunrise, Lamine. No cameras, no press release. Just a boy who had grown taller and a man who had learned how to set heavy things down. They walked home with the frame between them like a torch runner's pass carefully. On the shelf, the photocopy stepped aside without complaint. The real napkin slid into place and the room changed in the small way rooms do when something true returns. That night, the father cooked too much food and laughed too loud and burned the onions a little because joy is messy. Mateo told the story over and over until it felt like a song. The frame watched from the shelf, quiet and proud. And somewhere else, in a cafe that still smelled like rain, a napkin dispenser stood a little straighter, as if it knew that paper can be a bridge, a promise, a lifeline disguised as something ordinary. He signed a napkin. He walked out into a day big with other things he didn't know. But sometimes saving a life doesn't look like sirens or headlines. Sometimes it looks like ink on soft paper, a small star, and a world that decided to hold each other up right on time.